Hey friends, it's Jessica from Three Rivers Homestead, and I'm back with another video to kind of show you what we were up to this week on the homestead. So it's been a different week here on the homestead. Temperatures dropped significantly. We got down below freezing for a few nights. They were anticipating snow, so that is causing some changes around here in terms of our work and our routine. We're having to start our days out gathering wood from the wood pile and bringing it inside. So in this video, I'm going to kind of talk about how routines are changing with the changing seasons here on our homestead. I'll also be sharing a couple of kitchen projects that we were doing involving apples. We made some apple pie filling and canned it, as well as applesauce and apple scrap jelly. I'm also going to show you how we light our wood stove and explain that whole situation. Lots of other fun things that we were up to. Levi, my 6-year-old, is currently taking over the chore of gathering wood every morning and bringing it inside, and the big boys are kind of teaching him, they're training him this week on what is expected of him, what size wood is best to bring in, how much of each that we need to be stocked, all of those things. So it's wonderful to have these big helpers who are thoroughly trained in the chore that can teach the little ones how to take over the chore for them. We're reaching the point where my older children are not too far away from getting their driver's licenses and perhaps getting jobs outside of home to earn money. And so it's really important that we begin training these little ones to take over the work that the big ones have been doing. After chores, everybody's nice and cold from being outside, and so they enjoy sitting by the fire to warm their fingers and toes back up before we get to the work of the day. And the work of the day lately has consisted mostly of homeschool work. Now that the weather has changed, our focus has turned from doing outdoor work to really hitting the books and catching up on all the things that we need to get done academically in order to stay on track and meet our goals for the year. We do not necessarily follow a traditional school schedule like the public schools or private schools do. We school year-round with more intense focuses during the times of year where the homestead work, is kind of the load of homestead work is lighter, and we can really focus on work. And then we take breaks when we need to focus more on working outside. And that's just what works for us. Something that's been happening this week that we noticed is that our little guy, our 4-year-old John, has been kind of jealous of the attention that his big brother gets doing school, my 6-year-old Levi, who's doing kindergarten now. And so John has been wanting to participate, and so we've been coming up with activities, and some of the kids have been working with him on learning his numbers, and that's been really fun for him. So now for our first big kitchen project of the week. Of course, the kitchen's busy every day around here, but I typically try to focus on just one preservation project or something like that per day that helps get food stored away. And in last week's video, we showed you all of the beautiful apples that we got from Adam's grandpa's orchard, and so I've been working on trying to get some of those jarred up. On this day, my focus was on apple pie filling. So we like to have shelf-stable pie filling ready to go. It makes baking pies extremely easy if all you have to do is make your crust, roll that out, and dump a jar of pie filling into it before you bake it. It's super convenient throughout the year. So all I'm doing is using my veggie spiralizer here to spiralize the apples. That takes the cores and the seeds out and leaves me with nice sliced apples. As you can see, I do not peel my apples for pie. I don't notice that that makes much of a difference. And then, as you know, busy homeschool mom, there's constantly children as I'm working in the kitchen coming to me with their books, needing help, questions answered with the work that they're working on, because as I'm working in the kitchen here, the big kids are still working on their independent work, their academics, and I'm available to answer questions as needed. That's one thing, as a large family homeschool mom, you've got to be good at multitasking. So right here I am dictating spelling words to my oldest son for his spelling test that he is taking, while I'm slicing up the apples for the pie. He's going to go finish the rest of that test and bring it in, and then I'm going to need to grade it for him before he can move on to his next lesson. So you just get really good at multitasking. You do your kitchen work. Children are constantly going to be coming in, interrupting, needing different things, and you just have to be able to roll with the punches and get the work done and fit it in however you can. And so this is what works for us. This is sort of my office here in the kitchen. The children know I'm always available. They're always welcome to interrupt me when they need to, and we all get what we need to get done. So many of you ask that question all the time, how do you get it all done? Well, this is how I do it. I multitask. I'm often doing 3 or 4 things at once, and you just sort of get used to that pace of life when you have a large family and you have a lot of things that you need to get done in the home. So back to the apple pie filling. I use the same pie filling recipe for all of my different fruits, for pears, for peaches, and for apples. And so I've shared this recipe with you as I did my peaches and pears earlier in the year, but I will go ahead and share it again for you just in case you missed that and haven't seen those videos. So after I slice my apples and fill my 7-quart jars, then I start working on the actual filling. The ingredients for that are 9.5 cups of water, 4.5 cups of sugar, 1 cup of arrowroot powder, 1 teaspoon of salt, 2 teaspoons of cinnamon, 1/4 teaspoon of nutmeg, and 1/4 teaspoon of allspice. And we just get that all on the stove, stir it around, get it to thicken up, and then we pour that over the apples that we have sliced, mix it all together really thoroughly, and then we're going to refill our jars with the apples and pie filling mixture so that we can get it all canned up. I will have that recipe all written out for you in the description of the video in case that's easier for you to remember it. So here we are. You saw before that I sliced the apples and filled the jars just so I knew how many apples I needed. And then I dump all the apples out into bowls, add the filling mixture to it to mix it around, and then refill the jars with the entire pie filling mixture. That's just what works well for me. And I'm grateful to have my helper Elizabeth on this day, who was willing to work with me to get the job done quickly. You always want to make sure you wipe those rims of your jars just to make sure no sticky pie filling was left. Place our lids on it, and then we are going to water bath can these jars for 25 minutes. And then we have shelf-stable pie filling ready to go for the rest of the year. That'll be extremely convenient whenever I want to whip up a pie for our family dinners. It's just ready to go. I think at this point, between all of the fruit pie fillings that I've done, I've probably got close to 50 quarts of pie filling on my shelves. That will give us, almost 1 pie a week, although we are a 2-pie family at this point. So that'll get us through about half of the year. And then there are days where I have the energy to make a pie filling from scratch, and that will be enough. All right, well, I told you things are changing and shifting in the house right now, and we're moving from my focus being on the garden to now it is nesting time. If you don't know what nesting is, it's this urge that pregnant women get to get their entire house in order, the nest in order before the baby comes. So I have worked on creating a list of all of the areas of the house that I want to reorganize, purge extras from, and just get things cleaned up before the baby comes. And my focus this week was on our laundry room. And I've just decided that the only way I'm going to accomplish this whole list before the baby comes is just to tackle it like I do canning. Every bit counts, right? You guys know I do that challenge every August where I just try to do something every day. That's what I'm doing with this list. I'm just picking something to focus on every day, and hopefully by the time the baby comes, it is all done. If I'm having a day where I'm not feeling great because of the pregnancy or having a hard time moving around, I'm grateful to have all these helpers. On this day, they crawled into our little closet under the stairs for me because it's hard for me to get under there. And we pulled everything out of it so that we could clean it out, sweep, dust, get all the cobwebs out of there, purge any junk, and reorganize it. And that was really helpful. So I feel good. We started the nesting list. That's the hardest part, is getting started. And now we can just work on knocking things off one at a time to get that list accomplished. Another one of my nesting goals before the baby comes is to have the children more capable, have an organized system for handling meals, because my hope after the baby comes is that I can take a couple weeks off from being in the kitchen entirely and just rest and recover and not have to worry at all about making meals. And so my plan, what we did last week, I sat down with the children and they each picked, we made the calendar of the whole week, Monday through Friday, and put breakfast, lunch, and dinner on a chart, and all of the kids picked meals that they would like to be responsible for. So for example, on Monday morning, Grace handles breakfast. On Monday lunch, Elizabeth makes lunch. On Monday dinner, Gabe makes dinner, and they all have a schedule throughout the week. And then what they're doing when I sit down to meal plan every Sunday is I include all of the children, and they pick meals or recipes that they're interested in learning how to cook. And the goal is during the next month or two before the baby comes, they will be my sous chefs and kind of work with me to learn those recipes, with the goal of, by the time the baby comes, they are so good at making those things that they don't need my help at all. And I can count on them to just, make dinner for me, make breakfast for me, and it will all be handled. So this is a huge blessing. It's something I didn't have when I only had smaller children. And if you train your children up properly, then they can be a blessing and help you out when you need that help when they're older. And this is just part of large family life. Everybody's got to pitch in, everybody's got to help to get the work done. And I don't see this as a detriment to my children. I see it as a blessing. By the time my children leave the nest, they will be capable. They'll have a handful of recipes that they know how to cook from scratch, and it will just make them that much better prepared to handle the real world and take care of themselves when I'm not there to do it for them. So I am grateful for the opportunity to do that. Our next big kitchen project of the week, we're taking more apples and we are going to make some applesauce. That's a staple here in our house. So my laziest, easiest way to make applesauce is just to kind of have my apples here and throw them in my roasting pan with just a little bit of water in the bottom to prevent scorching. And then I just literally stick them in the oven and bake them while we're doing school so that I don't have to worry about putting them on top of the stove and stirring to prevent scorching or whatever. And I can do a large amount of apples this way. My crock pots would not fit this amount of apples. So this is a great way to do it. After school, you can see they're all baked up. And we're just going to run them through my old-fashioned mill here to remove the skins and any seeds or any other solids that are left behind. Whenever I get this tool out, Elizabeth is always the first to volunteer to use it. I don't know why. She really loves helping with this tool, and I am grateful for her help. So you can see she's running it through that mill, and then we're just getting the applesauce that falls down into the bowl and getting it jarred up. We are at the point now that we need about 2 quarts of applesauce per meal for our family, so we need to make quite a bit of sauce this season. This will only be 3 meals right here, but it's a start. Every little bit counts, right, friends? So it's more applesauce than we had before the day began. David over there is working on dinner while we are finishing up doing this canning. I'm going to get my 4 jars lids here on the jars. And if you would like a discount code for your own lids, check the description of this video and you can get 10% off your own 4 jars lids. All right, so that applesauce is going to be in the water bath canner for 20 minutes, and David's making dinner in the meantime. None of that leftover sauce was wasted. Elizabeth licked the bowl clean, so we don't have to worry about any waste there. And we also don't have to worry about any waste with the skins and things. I threw all of that into a bowl with some water, and we're going to put this on the stove and let it simmer for about an hour, and that will make some apple scrap juice that we can then turn into jelly. You guys know me, I try to waste as little as possible. We try to squeeze as much food out of what we have as we can, and I just think that this is a wise use of our resources and Just a great way to be a good steward of the blessings that we've been given. So as you can see, I'm just taking my spoon here, my ladle, and kind of straining out the liquid, the juice that these scraps created. And eventually we will fill these jars, and that is how much juice, free juice, that we got just from utilizing these scraps. And that is wonderful. I'm just going to get those boiling on the stove. I'm using my Pomona's Pectin cookbook. I'll link this in the description. And I'm going to make some jelly out of it. Pomona's is my favorite pectin because you don't need a lot of sugar to get your jelly to gel. And so since it's not my recipe, I can't share it, but I will share the book that I got the recipe from if you're interested in a low sugar alternative for making jelly. So we got all of that jelly into our jars, and look at this. I think it ended up being about 7 total pints of jelly that we got just from the apple scraps. So make sure you use your scraps either to make vinegar or to make jelly. It would be a shame to have that go to waste when you could fill more jars and fill your pantry and feed your family with those scraps. You know, it's another question we often get about a large family is how do you afford to feed all of those children? And it's just that we don't let anything go to waste. We try to use everything. We don't throw food away. We eat our leftovers. We try to utilize everything that we can to stretch it as much as we can. And that's a way to really affordably feed a lot of children. Obviously, growing it yourself helps. Also, making it yourself helps. And so that's what we're going to do today. I have this organic seasoned salt that I really like from Redmond's Real Salt, but it's extremely expensive. It costs $11 for this tiny little jar. And so I thought, I have all of the ingredients. They're listed here on the back of the jar. I could just make this blend myself. So that's what I'm going to work on today. I wrote down all of the ingredients, and ingredients are typically listed in a way so that the most of it is at the top down to the least of it is at the bottom. And so that's kind of the method that we are going to follow in order to mimic this seasoned salt as best as we can. So you guys can see the list of ingredients there. I've gathered them all, and we're just going to start at the bottom and put all of these things in. So I ended up doing a teaspoon of each of all of these ingredients. And except for the garlic powder and onion powder, I did 1.5 teaspoons of those. And then to that, I ended up adding 10 teaspoons of salt so that it would be about half salt, half all of the other ingredients. And I think that's going to work out perfectly for us. I'm using pink Himalayan salt, so the color of my final product might be a little different. This is what the original product looked like. You can see it's really like a deep yellowy brown orange color. And so I put all of my ingredients into the food processor and blended it all together. And let's see what I end up with. There you go. So not exactly the same color, but pretty similar. And it smells just like the original seasoned salt. So I think that I'm going to be pleased with this. Since I buy my seasonings and my salt in bulk, the amount that I used here was, pennies. It cost me so little to put this little jar together. So to think that I saved myself, $11 by doing this. This is how we afford to feed so many children. So do it yourself. You don't need to purchase these big, fancy, expensive items when you're perfectly capable of putting it together yourself. And so I'm excited to have my own little homemade season blend. Hopefully that recipe helps you. Okay, and the last thing that I'm going to show you this week, I mentioned that we're back to using the wood stove, so I thought I would show you how we light our wood stove every day and build an efficient fire. We heat 100% with wood. We do not have a furnace in our house, so we have to use a fire. Gabe starts by taking 2 logs and kind of putting them in a V shape at the bottom. He fills in between with paper scraps. As a homeschool family, we have a lot of paper, so we just kind of collect that for the purpose of fire building. And then he puts a layer of cardboard scraps on top of that. And then we do smaller pieces of wood over the top, followed by some larger pieces of wood. And then once we get the fire going, to keep it going, we can just throw a large log in. But to get it going, you need to add a little oxygen at the bottom by opening up the vents. We just light it, and then that paper will light the cardboard will light the smaller pieces of wood, and then the smaller pieces of wood will eventually light the larger pieces. Gabriel handles starting the fire for me every day and keeping it going, and that is a blessing because as of a couple years ago, this was my job. Now I have children that are capable of helping me, which is wonderful. Gabriel also every morning will clean off the windows. So he will get some wet ash and rub that over the window. That removes any soot. And then it's nice to be able to see the fire. It just creates pretty ambiance. More ambiance, I like to make potpourri, put a cinnamon stick, some whole cloves, some freeze-dried oranges, and that simmers and produces lovely smells in the house as the fire heats up. Up here we have a gauge. We want to keep the fire out of the black. That produces creosote that can build in the chimney and cause chimney fires. We also want to keep it out of the red because that means it's getting too hot and we're at risk of fires as well. So we want to keep that fire right in the yellow, and we kind of use that to gauge it throughout the day. Another gauge we do have a thermometer here on the wall, a thermostat. It is not attached to a furnace. We don't have a furnace, but it does read the room for us, and we like to keep the fire, so that the room will be in the 70s somewhere. Another change that happens in the winter is that I dry my laundry indoors by the wood stove. A load of laundry can dry in just a couple hours if that wood stove is really hot, and it adds moisture to the air, which you need when you're using a wood stove. It can be very dry in the house, and this laundry adds moisture, which is extremely helpful. So that's how life is beginning to change for us. Things are becoming more inward. We're moving inward into the house. We're all sort of nesting and centering life around the warmth of the wood stove, focusing on school, focusing on playing games, and just being inside instead of being outside and doing all the work. Now is the time that we get to enjoy the fruit of all of our labor and just relax. So, all right, friends, we will see you next week with another video. Until then, I hope you have a great week. Bye.